By the end of this video, you'll learn to set up swiping gestures which you can use to perform any actions. No, not that. I meant actions like these. Now before we get started, you should know how pose detection works. I have already covered this in my previous video, which you can check it out over here. Consider this as a prerequisite. Alright then, let's get started. So here I have my Unity project open, which has been set up with the latest Meta XR all-in-one SDK version 66, and it has been set up with all the player settings. Now you can also download this project from the GitHub link provided in the description below, or if you want to know how to set it up from scratch, then you can check out this video over here. Now to set up our scene, in the project window, search for large room. Make sure to set the search to all. Select the prefab and add it to your scene. Next, search for skybox gradient. Select the material and add this to your scene as well. Then open the large room prefab, select the example menus and disable it. Next, to add the camera rig and hand tracking, navigate inside Meta, Tools, Building Blocks. From this window, add the camera rig block, add the hand tracking block, and scroll all the way down and add the virtual hands block. Adding these blocks will create a camera rig with a tracking space to track your headset, left controller left hands, right controller right hands, and it also creates the interaction block wherein it visualizes your left and right hands. Now before we implement gesture recognition, it's really important for you to understand its concept. And so here's a flowchart that I created, with the help of which I'll explain how a gesture is recognized. So a gesture is recognized only when these two conditions are met. First, the hand should be facing a given direction, and second, the hand should be making a swiping action. If either one of these conditions are not active, then the gesture is not recognized. Now we can easily check if the hand is facing a given direction by looking at the hand orientation with the help of the transform recognizer active state component. Next, for the hand swiping action to be activated, these three conditions have to be met. A hand pose has to be detected, the hand has to be moving, and the hand has to be rotating about its wrist. If any one of these three conditions are not met, then the hand swiping action will not be activated. Now, we can check if the hand is rotating by checking the wrist joint rotation using the hand joint rotation active state component. And if the hand is moving by checking the joint velocity of a bone using the joint velocity active state component. Next, for the hand pose to be detected, a given hand shape and the given wrist orientation have to be recognized. If either one of these conditions are not met, then the pose will not be detected. Now here, the hand shape recognition can be done with the help of the shape recognizer active state component. And finally, the wrist orientation is activated when the hand orientation either relative to the world axis or relative to the head axis is recognized. Once again, the hand orientation can be checked by using the transform recognizer active state component. Alright then, now let's jump into Unity and implement this. So here in Unity, inside your project folder, search for gesture. Make sure the search is selected for all. Select the swipe forward gesture and add it to your scene. Now let's add all the references that it needs, then we'll see how the prefab works. So first we need to add a hand reference. For that you can navigate inside the camera rig. And here we have the left hand and right hand inside the interactions. Now I'm going to add the right hand, and here I'm going to rename this as swipe forward gesture right. Then select the provider reference, and here we need to add the finger feature state provider, transform feature state provider, and joint delta provider reference. Now since we have used the building blocks, these components are not available by default. It's something that we'll have to add. So inside your hand interactions, you can open the left hand and right hand, select hand features left, hand features right, and add the component finger feature state provider. Next, add the transform feature state provider, and finally add the joint delta provider component. Now while the left and right hand features are selected, navigate to the finger feature state provider component, and here we're going to add the list of state thresholds. So click on the plus symbol, select thumb, select the state threshold as default thumb finger state threshold. Click on the plus symbol, let's select index this time, and here we're going to select the index finger feature state threshold. Now for the rest of the fingers, which is going to be middle, we're going to select the default finger feature state threshold, and click on the plus symbol. It's going to remain the same for the ring and for the pinky as well. Now select just the finger feature state left, and here make sure that the left hand has been referenced, and also make sure that all the other references are there as well. Now do the same for the right hand. So here make sure that all the references are there. Then select the provider reference. Now since we are referencing the right hand, select the hand features right, drag and drop it in here, select it once more and do it again. Alright, with that we have added all the references. Now if you remember, for gesture recognition it has to meet two conditions. First is that it has to detect the hands facing certain direction, and second, it has to detect the hand making a swiping action. Now when both these steps are detected, the sequence gets activated and it will remain active while the hand is moving. Once it gets deactivated, you will be able to reactivate it only after the time mentioned over here. Now here, if we select the first active state, you'll see that it has the transform recognizer active state component, which has been configured in such a way that it detects when the hand is pointing in the forward direction. The second activation state is hand swiping, which gets activated when these three conditions are met. Let's have a look at them one by one. First, we have the hand sideways, which gets activated when a shape has been recognized and the hand orientation has been recognized. Now this prefab has been set up with a shape recognizer to detect finger index not closed shape. Now you can change this to any shape of your choice. Moving to the hand orientation, it has been set up to detect wrist up with reference to the world axis or wrist up with reference to the head axis. Next, we have the hand moving state, which has the joint velocity active state component. Now this component tracks the velocities for a joint, which is nothing but the position deltas over the last two frames, and compares them to the velocity target along the provided axis. Now if the velocity target is met for a minimum time threshold, this state becomes active. And finally, we have the wrist rotating state, which has the joint rotation active state component. This component tracks the angular velocity of the joint and compares them to the rotation target along the provided axis. Now if the rotation target is meant for a minimum time threshold, this state becomes active. Now here, to understand hand axis, you need to have certain knowledge about the anatomy of hand and wrist. I will leave a link for that in the description. Also, if you're wondering as to why the hand orientation is being tracked not just in the world space but also along the head axis, well, it's to allow the gesture to get recognized even when the head is tilted. Alright, so with that we have set up the gesture recognition for a right hand. Now to set it up for the left hand, you can duplicate this prefab and rename it as swipe forward gesture left. Navigate inside the camera rig, hand interaction, select the left hand and drag and drop it inside the hand reference. Open this prefab, select the provider reference, and here we need to replace all of them with the hand features left. And that's about it. Now you can use the gesture recognition to perform any action that you want. For this video, we'll create a cube and change its color. For that, in your hierarchy, you can right click, select 3D object and add a cube. Scale it down to 0.2 in all the direction and place it over the table. Then add a component called color changer. Now this script comes along with the sample packages of the Meta SDK. Now if you're not able to find it, then make sure to download the samples. This component needs a target renderer, which is nothing but the cube's mesh renderer itself. Now we want to detect the gesture recognition only around the proximity of this cube. For that, create an empty game object and call it as check over, and add the component collider contains hand joint active state. Now since we have gesture recognition for both left and right hand, we need to add this component once again. And here we need to reference the hand, and the easiest way to do it is to go inside cube and add the component called as hand reference. Navigate inside the camera rig, select the left hand, drag and drop it in here. Add the hand reference component once again, select the right hand and drag and drop it over here. Then select check over, select the cube, drag and drop it inside hand, and from this window, first let's add the left hand, drag and drop the cube once again, and let's select the right hand. Now these components need the entry colliders and exit colliders. So create an empty game object as a child of check hover and call it as entry collider, and then create another empty game object and call it as exit collider. Then select both the game objects and add a sphere collider. Select the entry collider and adjust its radius such that it encloses the cube. Select the exit collider and adjust its radius such that it encloses the entry collider and the cube. Then select the check hover, select the entry collider and add it inside the entry colliders. Do the same for the other component. select the exit collider and add it inside the exit colliders. Now to check if either the left hand or the right hand is hovering inside this enclosure, we need to add a component called active state group and add these components to the list of active states, and also change the logic operator from AND to OR. Now the next step here is to change the cube's color only when the hand is hovering inside this enclosure and making the swiping gesture. And to do that, right click on the cube and create an empty game object and call it as select. Then create two more game objects as a child of this and name it as left hand swipe action and right hand swipe action. Then select both these game objects and add the active state group component and also the active state unity event wrapper. Then select the left hand swipe action and inside the active states, drag and drop check hover and select the active state group. Then select the swipe forward left gesture, drag and drop it in here and select the sequence component. Next, select the active state group component and drag and drop it inside the active state parameter over here. Now let's do the same for the right hand swipe action. So inside the active state list, we want to add the check hover and select the active state group. Select the swipe forward gesture right and drag and drop it inside the active state group and select sequence. Select the active state group and drag and drop it inside the active state parameter. Now once again, you can select both the game objects and when activated, you can add it to the list. Select the cube, drag and drop it in here, and from the functions, we can select change color, next color. Now if you want, you can create a different script to create different actions for left hand swipe and right hand swipe. Alright, so now to test this scene, make sure to connect your headset using link or AirLink. Now if you're not sure how that's done, you can check out this video over here. Save your scene and press the play button. And now I want to place my hand such that it's inside the entry collider, and now when I swipe my hand, the color changes. Same thing for the left hand as well. Now here you might see there's a problem that the user will not know where exactly the entry collider is. So I might place my hand here and try to swipe, and like you see, it does not happen. So let's fix that. Now to add visuals on hover, let's create an empty game object as a child of check hover and call it as visual and add the look at target component. Now to rotate parameter is going to be the visual itself and the target is going to be the center eye anchor. Then right click on visuals, select 3D object and add a quad. Inside the mesh renderer component, select the material and search for rounded box unlit z-test always material and add it. Then scroll down and get rid of the mesh collider and add the material property block editor and also add the rounded box property component. Now here we'll adjust these values such that it forms a frame around the cube. So the width can be somewhere around 1.8. The height can also be the same. Select the color as black and bring the alpha to 0. Select the border color as white and reduce the alpha color to a certain value. Then we can set the radius top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right as 0.05. And let's set the border inner radius as 0.15. Then go ahead and disable the mesh renderer. Select the check hover game object, scroll down and add the active state unity event wrapper component. Then select the active state group, drag and drop it over here, and then when activated, let's add a function to select the quad, and from the drop down we want to select the mesh renderer bool enabled to true, and when deactivated we want to select the quad once again, and from the function drop down we want to select mesh renderer bool enabled to false. Alright, now we can save the scene and test this once again. And this time when I place my hand here, you will see that a frame is seen indicating that the hand is being detected. Now if you swipe, the color changes. Now, what if you want to detect backward swiping gesture? Let me show you how to do that as well. Select the swipe forward gesture right, duplicate it and call it as swipe backward gesture right. And in here, there are only two things that we need to change. Inside the hand swiping, we have the hand moving. So instead of palm forward, we need it to be palm backwards. And the wrist rotating, instead of flexion, it has to be extension. So let's go ahead and disable the forward gesture. Select the hand right swipe action. And here we want to change it from swipe forward gesture to swipe backward gesture and select the sequence. And now when we press play, and now here if I use my right hand and swipe forward, the color does not change. However, when I use my right hand and swipe backwards, the color changes. And that's it. What are the next steps? Now that you know the concept of gesture recognition, you can come up with some creative ways of using gestures. Here's an implementation that I saw on LinkedIn. And here's an implementation that I used in my own project. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.